All right. Let's get started. Today I want to talk about CRM. And before you click away, if you're afraid of computers, relax. I will endeavor to create some value for even those who don't have a computer-based CRM tool. And we can explore this concept. But before we get started, as always, I want to ask you to grab some paper and a pen so that you can make a commitment to yourself. You can pause the video right now, go ahead and grab that stuff. Make a commitment to yourself that you'll take away something actionable from what we discussed today and you'll apply it in your business. And even if you are an expert at CRM or if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I think you're going to learn something and you'll be able. Always commit. Learn something just a little bit, or if it's not something that you've learned that's novel, then I want you to implement something that you've already known and you were reminded of by this. And sometimes in a conversation, what ends up happening is you'll be inspired for something that's completely unrelated. Maybe something that I don't even mention, I remind you of as we're talking. So there's always value in this. And take a note and make a commitment. The real key is making a commitment. Do something today to advance your business. Okay, so back to CRM. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and it's a tool or a system through which you manage your relationship with your customers. And of course, we all want more customers. That's how we get our business to grow. And the concept of a relationship is really important to understand. I've mentioned many times in various videos that people buy from whom? Who do they buy from? They buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And how do you get to know somebody? Through a relationship. And so you want to think of this system or tool that we're discussing today as a mechanism through which you will strengthen your relationship with your prospective customers. And that's the name of the game. Ultimately, if you have a huge army of people out there who know, like, and trust you, your business will do just fine. And then you always want to be growing that as well. Okay, so I've always talked about how can you win? And I always said, he or she with the biggest database wins. All right, so we want to think of our database as a list of all the customers we have. But I want to modify that statement. He or she with the biggest database wins. Let's put in the word active. Let's modify database to be active database. He or she with the biggest active database wins. If you had a huge list of names of prospective and existing customers, and you didn't do anything with them, you didn't contact them, you didn't ever engage with them, and you didn't build your relationship, eventually it would fizzle out. You wouldn't generate continual sales, and you certainly wouldn't grow your sales from it. So what I mean let's define what active is in terms of the database. I like to say that someone is active in your database if you've communicated with them in some way within the last 90 days, okay? So that means what I'm in effect saying is that the expectation is that you communicate with your customers a minimum of 4 times per year. Now that is on the low side based on how tools work today and what your competition is likely doing to build the relationship with your customers. You know, I have businesses that communicate with me daily and or several times a week or so on. It's industry specific. You certainly don't want to nag your customers or annoy your customers. So you want to think of what are the reasons why you would communicate with a customer. You certainly don't want the only reason to be a request for sales. That's okay. People understand that you want them to purchase from you, your product or service. They know you're in business and you can only stay in business to make money and by making money. But it would get old and tiresome pretty quickly if the only thing you did when you talk to somebody is ask them to exchange money for your product or service. That's not really building a relationship. So I want you to brainstorm today. Maybe this is your takeaway. Brainstorm today a minimum of 20 reasons. That's a challenge. A minimum of 20 reasons that you can communicate with a customer. And you're only allowed for one of them to be asking them for business. There can be sort of peripherals to that, I suppose. But let me give you a couple of examples to get you started. It may be that it's been 1 year since they purchased a product and you wanted to wish them happy anniversary. Or maybe you know your customer well enough to know that it's actually his or her wedding anniversary. Maybe it's their birthday and you are going to send them a birthday greeting. It might be that there is something going on in the news and you happen to know something about this customer and they'd be very interested. Maybe there's something different that has changed at your business. You want to update your customers on a latest enhancement to your offerings. So there's a few things to get you started. Brainstorm today, come up with 20 reasons that it would be 20 legitimate reasons to contact a customer. And you want these things to help build the relationship. They need to be of value from your customer's perspective. Don't look at these contacts as simply from your perspective, a way of building value for you and your business. I want you to step into your customer's shoes and empathically think, how is this of value to my customer? And if it's not, then maybe you want to omit that one or reconsider it or work on it a little bit so that your reasons for contacting your customer always in some way offer value to the customer. Okay, so remember, people buy from those that they know, like, and trust, and we're going to try to build our relationship with our customers. He or she with the biggest database wins. So how is it that you can create a big database? Maybe you're a startup business. Maybe you already have a lot of customers, and you have to apply this information in the context of your business and your experience and what is actually happening for your business. Some of you have been in business for many, many years. Some of you are just getting started. So let's cover some of the common ways that you might grow a database, grow a list of customers and prospective customers. The first one would be through your personal center of influence, networking. Take some time and brainstorm a list of everyone you know, every single person you know. And there's all sorts of ways to brainstorm. I've heard it said that you could take, in the old days, the yellow pages, but you could look online in some kind of listings of the various types of occupations that are out there and just alphabetically go through them. Okay, A for accountant. Who do I know that's an accountant? And write down all the names of the accountants. B is a butcher and a baker. And who do I know that are butchers or bakers? And you write down the name of all the butchers and bakers, and so on and so forth through the alphabet. Another way is you might start with the different places you actually go or attend in your life. Maybe your office. Who do I know at the office? You write all those people down. Who works for me? Maybe you're involved in your community, in a volunteer program, or in sports, in your church. Who do I know at church? You write down all those people. So brainstorm and come up with a minimum of 100 names. Okay, now a caveat here, you're not going to necessarily contact all of the people on your list. Don't think of it that way. This is not a list of everyone we're going to contact and try and generate business from. This is a brainstorming exercise. What this does is opens up your mind so that you can think of more and more. That's the way brainstorming works, is that when you kind of put parameters or blinders on or give yourself restrictions, you'll omit people that you shouldn't omit. Like, who did you go to junior high school with? Maybe, I've never thought of those people. But also when you come up with a name, like maybe you write down the name Stephanie and because there was a Stephanie in your third grade class, and then you think of all the Stephanies you know. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I know a Stephanie that I just spoke with yesterday. You write down those names. So you're brainstorming, and just keep brainstorming as many names as you can. Come up with a minimum of 100 names. And then that's one way to start a database, okay? And then later we will add to that database by figuring out who do we have contact information for, and how would we, if we were to contact these people, how would we contact them? Is it email? Is it through social media? Is it telephone? Or is it engaging them face-to-face? There are many people in your center of influence that you see face-to-face. You might not even know their names. Maybe it's the dry cleaner that you deal with. And, you know, great guy, you drop off your clothing and you speak with him, and maybe you only know his first name or whatever. You can get business cards from these people, or you can collect contact information later, okay? So that's the first place that people build a database, and especially when getting started in business, especially if it's the type of business that is a networking, referral-based business. The second way that you can generate a bigger database is through referrals. And when you are actually dealing with customers, you want to ask for referrals, okay? A third way is through something known as content marketing. So maybe you are offering a newsletter, some email campaigns you've got that you're sending out, you're recording videos for your customers, or any number of things. You're writing blogs. This is content that people are consuming from you, and often what'll be a best practice is that you have people sign up for that content to be delivered to them. Maybe they're going to sign up and get your newsletter, or once a week they're going to get the latest video that you posted, or a blog post or whatever. And so that grows a database through content marketing and people signing up. Another one would be through inquiries to your business. Okay, so it's obvious. The last one is going to be customers and actual people that you transact with. You need to be recording them, and that's how you primarily grow your database, you might think, at least long term. But in the beginning, there's these other ways. And going back to inquiries for just a moment here, what about all those people that inquired about your services who never engaged? They didn't purchase, they didn't buy. That doesn't mean they never will, and it certainly doesn't mean that they don't know people who might. So you want to consider them valuable additions to your database. So this concept of a database, if we think of that as just a list or a storage place for all of the contact information of prospective customers in the market. They may not be prospective customers for you, but they may know someone who's the ideal customer for you. So always think in those terms. It's not necessarily the person himself. It may be someone that that person knows who would be ideal for your market. So that's how we're going to grow our database. And the premise of a large database is that we are going to contact people in that database in some way. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it could be through social media, it could be through email, it could be through SMS, text messaging, it could be telephone, or it could be face-to-face meetings. Your business will probably have one or more ways that makes more sense for communicating with your customers. And I would recommend that you engage in as many as possible different ways of contacting. That way it doesn't grow stale so quickly. So let's say, for example, you are following up with your customers via telephone. Well, 4 telephone calls per year where you connect or leave a voice message or something like that is not a big deal. But then if you had 4 more emails and you had 4 more text messages and you actually visit with your customer a few times per year, now you can have, maybe 15 or 20 contacts per year with your customer, and it's much better than just having one contact. The concept of building that relationship and engaging, keeping a customer active is very important, because we all know someone who, instead of knowing someone in the third person, think of it from your own perspective. In the first person, we all know of a time where we were in the market for something and we maybe even purchased something, and we totally forgot that there's somebody we know or somebody we've been dealing with who's been working to earn our business, and we went and impulsively purchased elsewhere. And then maybe you bump into that person, or the next time you're around that business, you think, oh my goodness, that person, I should have probably purchased from them. He was such a nice guy. And that's because he didn't build the relationship enough. He didn't keep it active. So we really only have ourselves to blame when we lose a sale because we just weren't top of mind. We want to build that database and build the relationships with the people within that database by giving them value, building the relationship, having interactions on an ongoing basis. And in sales, this is known as follow-up. You have to follow up with your customers or prospective customers. So I want you to think of follow-up and break it into 3 categories. There are 3 different types of follow-up. The first one is with prospective customers. Okay, so maybe somebody inquired about your business. They asked for a quote. Maybe you're having some renovations done, or they're having some renovations done at their home. They have you come out for a quote, and they didn't pull the trigger at that time. Clearly, you would want to follow up with them. You want to follow up and ask, if the timing's not right, you want to find out if there's an objection you can overcome. Maybe the price wasn't right, the timing wasn't right, they're going a different direction, they're exploring new options, that kind of thing. But it's through your follow-up that you're going to increase your chances of actually converting that lead to revenue. Okay, so that's sort of the obvious one. Everybody knows you should follow up with prospective customers. Despite the fact that it's obvious, so few businesses do it. Isn't it annoying when you take the time to research a business, you reach out to them, maybe you've filled out a web form, you emailed them, you left a message, and you never hear back from them? Or you do, and they promise they'll follow up with you for more information, and they don't. You're always asking yourself, I guess they have as much money as they need. I guess they don't need any new business. I think it's because they lack a good customer relationship management system or tool is more likely. It's likely that you slip between the cracks because so many small business owners in particular, but it goes to big business as well. If you don't have a good system in place, you can't be expected to remember everything. Your sales team, your customer service agents, they're not going to remember everything. It's got to be a system, a tool that is consistently followed. Okay, so the first type of follow-up is with prospective customers, with leads. The second type of follow-up is after the sale is completed, but before delivery of the product or service. So maybe somebody, in the example of the renovations, they liked your quote, they trusted you and your company, and they decide, okay, let's sign a contract, and you are going to proceed. Now, you've actually made the sale, but you haven't completed the work. So you want to follow up with customers in between that. It also could be any number of things. You maybe sold a home, a new house, and the sale is completed, but they don't have the home yet. Okay, so in between the time that they've made the purchase decision and they're actually enjoying the product or service, they're actually getting the benefits that they hope to get by engaging your services or buying your product. That is another great opportunity for follow-up. And you're familiar with that in the e-commerce context, because anytime you purchase something online, you get an email right away affirming your purchase and outlining, giving you a summary of what you ordered, and then you'll often get updates as to the delivery status. It's going to be, we've shipped it from our warehouse, and the next day you get another email, and the estimated date of arrival is in 3 days, and so on. So that's an example of follow-up after the sale, prior to the delivery. And then the third one, if it's not obvious by now, is after the delivery. Okay, so you've made the sale, you've delivered the product, and then you have an opportunity for follow-up to ensure customer satisfaction, number one. Number two, to retain your customers. And number three, to gain referrals. So again, if you think of that in the context of e-commerce, what you'll often get is an email asking you to rate the product or give a testimonial, some kind of review, those types of things. And in bigger ticket items, you may get a phone call or be presented with a survey that gives the business feedback on the whole customer experience. And this is a great way of gauging value with your customers. And you want to do that. You want to measure the value. We've talked before about the 4 ways to deliver value. One is through an excellent customer experience. And follow-up is one thing that, we're talking about building a relationship. A good relationship means a better customer experience. The second way is through the quality of the product. Following up after the delivery of the product is a great way to ascertain whether the person was happy with the product or service quality. And then the third way to build value is by having more convenience. You might find out in a feedback loop, such as a survey, such as a rating or a review from your customer, that there was something that wasn't very convenient for them, or they thought it really was convenient. The feedback gives you reinforcement of where you should look for opportunities for improvement. And then the fourth one, of course, is pricing, and you can, through the follow-up, get feedback on that value as well. But think of those 3, so let's just recap. Follow up with prospective customers, follow up with customers who have been sold but haven't yet taken delivery of the product, and follow up with those after delivery to ensure satisfaction, to increase your chances of retaining the customer, and to gain referrals. Okay, so these are great reasons to follow up. And I have to ask you, what are your options for doing this? Okay, so if you don't have a CRM system or tool in place right now, how are you looking after these things? Is it you are ignoring this? If you aren't doing this at all, and in some way, if you're not following up on a very strategic, planned, organized way, then you're losing business. You're getting customer attrition. You're not building relationships as strongly as you can with your customers, and you are not therefore maintaining an active database. Therefore, your database is probably dwindling. It's contracting. It's not getting bigger. And if you want to win in business, you've got to have a big database, an active database. Okay, so let's look at some of the ways that people can implement this. When I think of my own experience in business, going back many years, there was no such thing as a computer-based customer relationship management tool. So what I started using, I think, was just a pen and a notepad kind of thing, and writing things down. And I was gathering contact information from clients. And then what I did was, my mentor at the time taught me to draw a little triangle beside the name of the customer. Maybe there was a little note there. And he said, fill in the triangle, color it in when they're sold, or when you're no longer needing to follow up with them. That was a good system for the time, but it quickly became disorganized. You had, your notebook was filled with names and everything. It wasn't very organized. So the next thing I did, the adaptation I made, was I converted that to a ledger, much more structured, grid, where I had columns and rows with, customer name, phone number, product that they were inquiring about, and certain notes. And what I then found back in the day was, to make it more visually appealing, I used 3 types of highlighters, colored markers, to indicate their status. And so when somebody was sold, I would indicate that by highlighting them in green. If somebody was a dead lead and no longer interested, I would highlight that in pink. And yellow meant that they were still in the market, but what it meant was I moved them forward down the list, because what was happening was my ledger would get, very long, and you don't want to be flipping and flipping and flipping. So I would rewrite the information, believe it or not. I'd rewrite it down on the most current open line, and I would highlight it in yellow. And what I would always do is make sure everything was highlighted. On a page that was completely highlighted, I could essentially ignore that page, and I started keeping these sheets in binders. That was the early days of customer relationship management for Michael Bickert. Then came computers, I know I look like I'm only 19 years old, but I actually did this before before I had access to spreadsheets. And then I created a spreadsheet and essentially did the same thing on the spreadsheet that I just described doing with a binder and a paper or printed ledger. So the same thing, I was able to just sort of drag and drop, copy and paste names down and always stay current. When in fact the database was created and became available as a sales tool, as a customer relationship management tool, it blew my mind. And I've dealt with, I've used maybe six, possibly seven, I'd have to go through the names in my mind, of customer relationship management tools that I've used. It just blew my mind the first one I saw. I thought, oh my goodness, this is so convenient compared to doing it in a spreadsheet, and certainly compared to doing things on paper. Doing it in a database, the fields allowed for things like notes about their family. And you can imagine if you were doing a spreadsheet, the notes would get so long, and each time you followed up with a customer, and especially if they're a repeat customer over years, your notes were getting out of control. Well, with a database, your notes can be, you can just see the most current one. They're all chronologically saved. They don't clutter up things. You can have a view within the database that you only look at what's relevant to you at that moment, and then you can drill down and get more and more information. There's just no shortage of, it's unlimited how much information you can keep. And when we talk about building a relationship, and earlier I spoke about brainstorming the various ways or reasons for contacting a customer, and I said, well, there might be something they're interested in. I would start to record information like if the person mentioned to me that they were an avid golfer. Now, if something happened in the Masters, or Tiger Woods did something great or whatever, I would then use that as an opportunity to send out a value, a contact with value. Maybe I would email an article on what happened with the Masters to the golfers, and I could put a note. I always use the example of, you found out that the customer's daughter's name was Susan and she was in ballet, and you might follow up later and ask how Susan did in the production of the Nutcracker or what have you. So these types of things became much more easy to organize and easy to manage with a computer-based tool. Well, now it's gotten incredibly powerful. And I've mentioned before, we represent the very best CRM software that you can get, and it's super inexpensive. So there's really no reason to not use a powerful cloud database CRM tool. And you can start, I think it's imperative that you start with something with a foundational understanding, because it's really intimidating to look at some of these powerful tools. Like right now, our tool is capable, you name it, it does it. It has AI recommendations. You can build into the system, you always could with the database, you build in a schedule of follow-up, like it'll remind you. What I like to describe the CRM computer database as is, think of it as a personal assistant. If you had a really conscientious assistant who was very diligent and never missed anything, you see in the movies where someone's like, get me so-and-so on the line, and the secretary is like, he's on line too, or whatever. Think of the tools available in database technology now as having the most conscientious, diligent assistant ever. Okay, so I'm your assistant, and yesterday you had 5 customers come in your store who inquired about something and did not purchase, but gave you their contact information. So you might say to Michael, your assistant, computer rendered Michael, your CRM assistant. See what I did there? You might say, Michael, tomorrow can you remind me to call these 5 people? I want to follow up with them. And then the next day, as soon as you come in, I present you with these names and numbers and say, these are the 5 people from yesterday that you wanted to follow up with. That is just one tiny example of the power of CRM. It can do all of that stuff for you. If you forgot to call them that day, if you failed to tell your assistant your computer rendered Michael, if you forgot to tell Michael, I did call these 5 people, he's going to follow up with you. Your computer assistant is going to follow up with you and say, hey, you wanted to call these 5 people, but you never did. Don't forget to call them. And he's going to keep reminding you until you tell the system, oh, no, I called them. Okay, and what happened? Oh, they said that they were going to go on vacation and they wanted me to follow up with them in 2 weeks. Would you like me to remind you to do that? And of course, the CRM does just that. Your electronic assistant is what the CRM is. It does that. But just so much more than that. Now it will integrate with your email campaign. So many of you are sending out letters and email campaigns to your customers. Well, the CRM keeps track of all of that. It keeps track of whether they opened the email or not and whether they engaged. It can track whether or not they clicked on any of the links within that email and whether they converted onto your website. So there's so much power. I mean, I can't barely get into the examples because there's just so much that it's capable of doing. It can be overwhelming when you're new, and that's why you want to start with the basics. Well, I want to make sure that I'm doing those 3 types of follow-up, following up with prospective customers, following up with customers who've placed an order but haven't gotten it yet, and following up with customers after the delivery of the product or service to ensure their satisfaction, to ensure to hopefully get some referrals, and also to increase the chances of retaining that customer for repeat business down the road. Remember, your business grows by conquesting new customers and by retaining the old ones. So if you can have a very high retention rate and reorder rate, and you conquest new customers, both from just strangers as well as through referrals, you're going to grow. And that's why those 3 types of follow-up are so critical. Begin there. Think of that as what your CRM is going to do for you, and then start adding on these more powerful tools. As an example, I'll just give you another example. Our CRM will be integrated with your phone. And so if you make a phone call to a customer, it can not only record the fact that you've done so, but it can actually record the telephone conversation. And so you don't have to type notes. I mean, you still can type a note, and it's probably best practice to summarize the result of the conversation, but you can go back and actually listen to the phone call again, and it's all integrated. You actually, one click of a button and it's dialing the phone for you directly from your computer. So there's just so much you can do right now with a powerful CRM. I want you to think about it. When you want to consider the power of what's possible with today's CRMs, think of if-then statements. So what that is sort of a computer logic, a way of thinking of computer logic. You can program into, and we can do it for you, you can program into your CRM, if the following condition exists or occurs, then the following thing happens. And it just goes and it follows that all along throughout the entire cycle of your relationship with your customer. And so you're really nurturing your customers on an ongoing basis to try to retain them while you're gaining new customers. Hope you got something that you can use today and you can strategize today. I gave you a couple of homework assignments in terms of brainstorming, those being, as to recap, a network, a list of everyone you know. And I don't care if you've been in business 20 years, do that anyway, brainstorm anyway, and you'll start to realize when you do this, you'll go, oh wow, actually there's a lot of people that I know that I've never done business with, and there's no reason that I wouldn't. You want everyone to know how great your products and services are. And if not the people that you actually know, then who? Why only deal with perfect strangers? So that was the first homework assignment. And the second one was to come up with a minimum of 20 reasons that you would contact a customer, and try to make sure each of those reasons build value. Leave some comments, share the video with someone you think that may benefit from it. Above and beyond everything else, make sure you take action today. All right, thanks for watching.